Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Get Wealth Podcast. I'm super excited to share this episode with you today. We got Corey Jacobson that came on the show, and we talked about how to buy your first rental property or how to buy your first house hack. This is exactly step by step how to do it. It's not fluff or theory. This is exactly what he did to go from using his 9-to-5 job to buying over 95 units. If you want to stick around to the end, we actually went in detail in the Get Wealth community where there was a live Q&A, and we actually looked up a market that you can find on Zillow, and we found a deal that works, and we analyzed the numbers. We talked about how to know if you're ready to buy that first rental property, whether you have enough financial stability for it to make sense. So stick around for all that and more, and enjoy the show. Do you still have a 9-to-5 job? And if so, how have you used that to acquire real estate, and how have you continued to use that?
So I do not have a 9-to-5 job anymore, but for the first 6 years of investing in real estate, I did. And my partner, Ryan, who we're 50-50 on everything, he still maintains his W-2 job. So, we kind of tell our story as like two guys I'm from Philadelphia, he's from Massachusetts, but we met, he lives in the Philadelphia area. We met back in college, and he was like, when we were going to the 9-to-5, we actually worked at the same place. He still works there, and I have since moved on and then went full time. But we were like, this can't be it. Like, this can't be, we went to college and we're just going to show up to this 9-to-5 and just like hope to retire at 67. So we kind of got the idea together to start buying real estate, just the two of us. And also at the same time, documenting our journey, podcast, social media, and all of that. So to answer your question, he still maintains his W-2. We started out buying small multifamily, started out with a house hack, duplex, triplex, like those types of things. And then once our social media and our brand started to grow, we realized that we were competing with people who were doing this full time. So we started to buy larger multifamily, actually out of state, like 5 to 30 units. We buy in New Hampshire and Vermont now with a partner that we met through our podcast. So I think anyone can do this while working a 9-to-5, though. And that's kind of the point of our messaging, is that we had our 9-to-5 jobs, both of us, for 6+ years before we even thought about leaving. So, I can get into more detail about how we did it and all that. Happy to answer any questions, but that is kind of the way that we operate today in 2025, 2026.
What was the 9-to-5 that you were working? What job?
So I started out, I'm a basketball guy by my heart. I coached for the last 10 years. This is actually the first year I haven't coached. So I was working for the 76ers. I wasn't in coaching there, but I was running their youth programs, like out of school. And, it turns out, Brendan, that they pay the players a lot more than the rest of the staff, which they deserve it, right? They're the product. But, I was getting paid like $35,000 a year to do this. And 26, 27 years old, I kind of was like, I don't know how long I can maintain this. But my boss, who is still a great friend of mine and mentor to this day, he told me, I can't really pay you too much more, dude, but what I can do is I can recommend that you buy a 5-bedroom house and live in one of the bedrooms and rent out the other 4 bedrooms so that you can save money. So I kind of took his advice. I bought a 3-bed, 2-bath, lived in one of the bedrooms, rented out the other 2 bedrooms. So I went from paying $1,000 a month in rent to living for free. And then I was like, wow, this is really this is working. Saved up some more money, deployed it into a duplex, $125,000 duplex in South Jersey, saved, 3 years of managing that property and making like $300 a month in cash flow, which is nothing to write home about. But 3 years later, I sold it for $100K profit. So when I was making that type of money in my job, realizing, wow, it would take me 3 years just to make this money, not let alone save this much money, I was like, I got to get into sales. So I left, I went into sales. I actually worked for my family's business for 5-6 years before leaving to do this full time, buy real estate. I'm a real estate agent in Philadelphia, and then I also help people, mentor them to try to help them buy their first rental property. So I was in sales for the longest time, and I learned so much of the tricks of the trade of just like negotiation and psychology, and just like I wanted to help people because I never had a mentor in the beginning. So sales is really kind of what shaped our journey to where it is today.
Very cool. So if you're put yourself in the the listener's shoes, and let's say someone's got a 9-to-5 job, and we'll get into maybe the details of what's required of that 9-to-5 job, but like, how would you go from point A to point B, working a 9-to-5, to buying your first rental property? Because it sounds like there's a couple strategies there. I know you can just go get a bank loan if you have a 9 to 5, but like you said, you can also live in it and what type of property. Can you kind of paint that picture of what someone should do if they have a 9 to 5 and are looking to just get started?
So there's a couple, I like to say there's two ways that you can do this. There's many, many more, but like I'm going to break down the two most simple ways to do it. One, and it doesn't really matter if you're single or married or kids or whatever, but like most people will house hack. And that really what that is just offsetting your living expense by either buying a single family home and renting out 2 of the rooms or 3 of the rooms, or buying a multifamily and renting out some of the units and you living in one unit. But it requires that you own or occupy. So if I were to go back, I would do the same thing, maybe even at a bigger scale. Now I'm 34 now. I don't have kids yet, but like I realize there might be people listening that are in their 30s and they have 2 kids. It's not as easy to like go buy a 5-bedroom house and rent out the bedrooms when you have children, right? So there's 2 schools of thought. One, when you're younger, 20s, 30s, it doesn't really matter how your age, but if you're younger and single, or maybe it's you and your significant other, buy a duplex or a triplex or a quadplex, live in one unit, rent out the other units. Now you can put as little as 3.5%, 5% down. So if you're buying a $400,000 or $500,000 property, you can get into these properties for $20,000. Now I would buy in an area that you want to live in, that you see growth, hospitals, education institutions, job growth in those specific areas. Delay gratification for a little bit, live in one of the units, rent out the others. And even if you're not offsetting your mortgage entirely, what you are doing is, for example, the average rent in Philadelphia for a 3-bedroom is probably $3,000 a month. So if I went and bought a multifamily, a $400,000 or $500,000 multifamily, I could instead pay $1,200 a month or $1,000 a month towards my mortgage and offset that significantly to save up to go buy the next property. So that's like the kickstart. That's the best way that I would, if I were to go back and do it again, I would do that. I would buy a duplex, live in one unit, rent out the others. Now, if you're more established and you have a high paying W-2, real estate investing is one of the best ways to offset some of your tax burden. So you can, if you live in New York or if you live in LA or if you live in San Fran, in these high cost of living areas where a duplex is $900,000, you can go to other states. For example, there's members of our community that are living in New Jersey, North Jersey, which is extremely high cost of living, but they're investing in Augusta, Georgia. They're investing in Detroit, Michigan, and they're buying properties that are $100,000, and they can churn out because they have the one thing that you need to invest in real estate, and that is live below your means. That's the starting point. Live below your means, and you save up that cash, and you then deploy that cash into these investments. And they're not get-rich-quick schemes, but they're little oil wells that 5 to 7 years down the line will produce you significant capital to go be free, go live your life. And a lot of people talk about cash flow, but the benefits of real estate investing are just tenfold with the appreciation and principal pay down and tax benefits, all the above. That was a mouthful there, but those are the 2 ways that I see people get started: is go live in one unit, rent out the others, or you can buy out of state. I don't manage any of our properties anymore. I used to. Once I got to 6 to 8 units, I was like, man, this is a pain managing these properties. And I'm not a business owner if I'm going and fixing toilets. I need to figure out a way to leverage my skill set to go buy more property and put people in the position so that there are property managers out there that are good. You just have to find the right ones.
So the out-of-state investing part, I know for me, that gives me some hesitation. It just seems like so much can go wrong. And if you aren't able to get to the property, that's probably a self-limiting belief. But how do you manage that? Is it completely with your property manager, or do you have to be involved in any capacity? And does that increase the risk in some aspect if it's out of state?
I think it depends on your risk tolerance and the situation that you're in. For example, I started out buying in my backyard where I was living, but then what I realized, Brendan, is that I was buying properties that were like 30 to 40 minutes away from me. So still in my like circle, but once I had this epiphany one night, I was like, well, I'm driving 30 minutes to go to this property to do whatever, to try to fix something, then 30 minutes back. And one time I forgot the keys and I was like, wow, okay, I just spent an hour and 20 minutes trying to get to this property, just travel to fix something that I could have paid somebody $30 an hour or whatever it might be to fix. And I realized once I stopped going to the properties that were 30 or 40 minutes away, I'm like, why could I not do this at 2 hours away? Or why could I not do this at a plane ride away? I built a good team, and first it was my handyman and my contractors, and then it was relying on the great property management teams out there with their handymen and their contractors. And you can even self-manage because there's property management software out there that'll allow you to have tenants pay through an app. And they can submit maintenance requests through an app. It's just a lot easier than people think. And I think people get scared. And that's why they stall out in growing their real estate portfolios, because they're the ones with paint all over their jeans and they're the one doing all the work. And you don't want to create another job through real estate investing. What you want to do is set yourself up so that you can be free. You can spend more time with your family. You can do the things that you want to do. I'm not out here preaching that in 3 years you're going to be sitting on a beach sipping pina coladas. What I am saying is that you can make work optional, and you can take the desperation out of the work that you don't have to do the work you don't want to do. Do something that you really enjoy and build wealth while doing it. So I think it's a leap of faith, but it's where are your best teams? And for me and Ryan, we invest, our last 4 properties we bought have been in New Hampshire and Vermont. We've bought an 18 unit in 2023, and in 2025, we bought a 10 unit, a 7 unit, and an 8 unit with a partner who lives there. So we're general partners, and he's a general partner. And then we bring in capital from outside investors, and we manage the property together. We underwrite the deals together. We manage a construction team together. We manage investor relations. We market the property. So all of those things are, part of the puzzle. It's just like, where do you fit in? And if you really want to treat this like a business, I think a lot of people are going to be priced out. If you live in New York City, it's going to be pretty hard to buy there, right? So that's my take. And I think I have strategies that I could help people put into place that actually work. But the fear of that's holding people back is they don't know how to underwrite deals and they don't know how to build good teams.
Yeah, I think those are great points, because I know tons of people. A guy that I just had on the podcast, Alan Woodruff, he's got 40 rental properties in Indiana, and he's got one guy over there. At least last I talked to him about it. We didn't get into that last conversation, but I remember he had one guy who was like a realtor, but also was property manager. And anytime there was a problem or something he had to fix, it was just, call him up, and, he'd send him on his way, and he was able to manage with construction and some of his flips going on. So I think that is a huge.
And where does he live, by the way? I'm sure it's not Indiana.
Arizona. Yeah.
Arizona. Yeah, exactly. And I think now there's a give and take here. So for me, we're buying now in an area that is like New Hampshire and Vermont is not seen as like a low cost, low barrier to entry, right? But we've created relationships with lenders there to try to get off market deals. But what I'm saying is you kind of have to meet people where they're at. For example, you could buy 5 or 6 properties if you have a high-paying W-2 in Indiana or Detroit, right? Or you could buy 1 property or 2 properties in an emerging market like Austin or Tampa or whatever. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it, but I think that a lot of people should be taking and paying more attention to taking the dollars that they make at their W-2 jobs and go deploying it into real estate, and it doesn't have to be in their backyard. And this guy that you mentioned, I think you said his name was Alan, like that's a great strategy, because buying in Arizona, if he's near Phoenix or Scottsdale, it's like he's getting a fifth of the amount of properties. But on the flip side is that he might get more cash flow in this Indiana market, less appreciation. So there's always a balance.
Yeah, at least when he was first buying, his minimum cap rate was like 10%.
Yeah.
And, their properties are like $50,000, and then they're paid off, and, they're cash flowing $1,500 a month. It was a really cash flow heavy market, from what I remember.
That is the strategy that I love to tell people, is that if you're going to go buy $80,000 properties, your plan shouldn't be to lever, and do all this leverage. It should be buy a few, take the cash flow from the few and start to pay off the one. And then if you have an $80,000 asset that's paid off, you really are realizing that $1,000 a month in cash flow. It's actually real. It's not just phantom. And I think that's how you can snowball into more and more properties. But the key is it's really hard to do this when people say like you can buy real estate with no and low money down. You can, but you have to be a steward of your own capital. You can't be out there like saying, I have no money, I'm going to go buy this real estate. It's like, yeah, you can do that and you can use other people's money, but who's going to trust you with their money if you can't manage your own? That's kind of my take.
That was actually the next question I was going to ask. How do you know you're financially ready to buy your first rental property? You mentioned that save up some money so you have enough for a down payment, with an FHA loan that can be like 3.5%. Do you need to make sure that you have no debt? Are you trying to make sure you have a certain income level? What's the threshold where you would say, okay, take the leap, maybe take on a little bit of risk, but you're ready to buy your first rental property?
Yeah, it's a good question. The majority of people that we talk to that are ready are between the ages of 25 and 50. And that doesn't really, the age, like I keep saying the age, it doesn't really matter, but let's say you have a 401k you have a high enough paying job. Doesn't have to be 100 grand, 200, 400, 500 grand, but like a high enough paying job that you're able to save dollars each month, whatever percentage you are doing this. Maybe you're investing in an IRA. You're getting a 401k match at your job. You have money on the sideline that you're just not sure what to do with it. And I think more people are ready than they think. If you have $30,000 in a savings account that's getting withered away by inflation, right? Like, don't get me wrong, everyone should have an emergency fund, without a doubt. But if you have money that's sitting in excess of that in a savings account that you're thinking you're getting 4 to 5% annually on your money, when inflation is actually 7, 8%, you're losing money every single year. Unless you're getting a 10% raise every year, what real estate is doing is it's giving you an inflation hedge against the debasement of our currency. And that's a whole nother conversation. But right now, in 2025, or $1 in 2020 is now worth 75 cents in 2025, 5 years later. So if it's sitting in a checking account, I always like to get my money out of the checking or savings account as quickly as I can. That's a roundabout way of answering your question. But if you have money on the sidelines a little bit, I like to tell people that you need to have 30 to 40 grand as just like a baseline. If that's what you have, plus maybe a 401k and IRA, and like maybe you're contributing to a brokerage account, you're thinking like, okay, this is going to take me 40 years to get to the amount of money that I actually want to be able to retire. Do I want to pursue that? Like, is that the route I want to take? And I just said to myself, no, like 80% of my net worth is in real estate. Some of it's more liquid than others. Like I'm literally selling a rental property later this month with me and Ryan because I'm going to go pay for my wedding. Like, it's not all delayed gratification until you die. It's just now I have options to be like, I'm going to live my life a little bit. I drive a paid off car. I'm 34. Like, I've been doing this delayed gratification for a long time. So I don't know if I totally answered the question, but I think that what people need to think about is like, is my money in my savings account, if I have 50, 100 grand in a savings account, is that the best place for it? Just because a lot of people from a high level will tell you that that's a safe place for it to be. I think it's actually not that safe.
Yeah, I think it's a great benchmark because if you have, it's almost an indicator of the rest of your finances. Because if you have that amount saved up, the odds are is you're not racking up a bunch of debt and you're not maxing out a bunch of credit cards. You're at least spending less than you're making. So you're kind of checking a lot of these boxes that would indicate, okay, you're somewhat financially responsible, and you have the amount that would probably get you into a property that, depending on the area of where you would want to
like
buy.
if you saved up your first 10 grand, I wouldn't suggest you go buy real estate. I don't think that you can use your $10,000 and get in private money lender, but like for me, I always said I would much rather 100 times over lose my own money than lose somebody else's money. So I was very careful about the first 3 to 4 years of building a virtual resume about what I was doing before I took a dollar from private money, hard money, family, friends, anybody to invest into deals that we were doing, because I'm just showing you here, this is what we did. This is the money that we made. This is how we were able to multiply our income through real estate. But if you have your first $10,000, you'll see people online say you don't need to, you can get into Section 8 with $5,000. It's like, I just wouldn't recommend anybody go down that road unless you have a clear picture and understanding of your personal finances and then reserves to back it up. But I also think that people overestimate what it actually costs to run a rental property. I mean, there's no time that I've ever been investing where I'm like, oh, I need 50 grand right now to fix something, So I think that people are kind of like a little bit nervous to jump in, but if it's all about the roadmap. If you have somebody looking over your shoulder showing you, hey, this is what you should do. This is a great property. You should go buy this. This is what I'm seeing. I think it's the confidence that people need to build in really deal analysis and what that looks like. So for me, I think that 30 to 40K number has always been something that I tell people to start with.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you're worried about being able to pay your mortgage if something breaks and you have to use the rental income for the mortgage and you don't have anything else, that's not a spot you want to be in. But if you can handle a one-off expense, usually it's not going to be more than $1,000. If it is, you can, if you still have some reserves set aside, I think that's the point that we're making here. And I think that's great advice as well. The next thing I want to get into, just to give people tactical knowledge here, pack as much as we can into this episode. How can people find that deal? So we've kind of covered which way to go about as far as strategy wise and the reason and how to know you're ready. So now you're ready. Where do you go find these? Are you looking on the MLS? Are you cold calling? What's the best way to buy your first rental property?
So I would recommend your first deal is from the MLS. I think that there's a number of strategies that you can do. You can do direct mail, right? You can do, you can cold call. You can do all these things. But if you just want to, like I always tell people, it's so much easier to buy your second deal than to buy your first because you just learn the game. And your first deal doesn't need to be a home run. I talk to so many people, Brennan, that are searching for years. 3, 4, 5 years. I'm just looking for that perfect deal. I'm just looking for that perfect deal. When you would have seen this run up of appreciation, if you just would have taken the plunge and bought that single or that double that was sitting in front of your face a couple years ago. So I think people are searching for the perfect deal. We have bought, and us and our community have bought majority of our deals on the MLS in 2025. It's possible. There are deals that are sitting out there that are cash flowing $300 or $400 or $500 a month sitting right in front of your face, especially now when the fear greed meter is extreme fear and people are not thinking about it. So MLS is a great place to start. Then once you graduate from, okay, are you going to get the best deal ever on the MLS? Probably not. It's probably already picked over. You're not going to get the 50% LTV, the property that's going to, that you're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars on in a couple years. Maybe, maybe not. But I think that is the best way that I would start, because once people see the vision of how I can be getting the tax benefits, my property is appreciating, I'm paying my tenants are paying the loan down, and then I'm getting cash flow, you start to see this, okay, this can snowball, and then I can graduate on to bigger, different types of strategies.
Okay, so let's go with that. If that is the strategy, how are you making that? How are you making the numbers work right now? I know when interest rates were a lot lower, it was kind of just like, shooting fish in a barrel. It's going to cash flow because your rent's going to cover the mortgage and you're going to have some extra for CapEx and vacancy and all that. Now with 6 or 7%, you're maybe having to put a lot more down, at which point is that a good return on your money with how much cash you're investing for your return? How are you? And I know there's other strategies like renting out rooms instead of just the house to a family. Is that the way to go, or what's your primary way to make these deals work?
I think it depends on your specific circumstance. If I'm speaking to the 28-year-old who works in tech, who has a $125,000 paying job, who saved up their first 50 grand and is renting, paying $2,800 a month, live downtown, I would tell you to do this. I would tell you to go in the outskirts of the area that you're living in right now and try to find a duplex for $450,000 and live in one of those units and rent out the other unit. Let's say you can find a 2-bed, 2-bath, or 2-bed, 1-bath, 2-bed, 1-bath for $450,000, and I can run the math for you, but you could be, your mortgage might be $3,200 a month total, right? So maybe it's a little bit more than what you're paying in rent, but you're able to rent out one of the sides for $2,000 conservatively. So then you're taking your $2,800 a month in rent and you're paying $1,500 a month if you put some money aside towards your mortgage. So you have a delta of $1,300 a month that you're able to now stack aside more and more and more so you can go buy the next deal. So that is simple. Those deals are all over the place. What I'm also seeing is like a place like Detroit, Michigan. There are community members that are in our community that are buying deals, $110,000 purchase price that will rent for $1,300 a month all day on the MLS, all day. And I'm seeing it over and over and over again. Got to be the right neighborhood. You want to buy in a C+, B-, B+ neighborhood. Got to factor in how much you're going to put in for capital expenditures and how much you're going to renovate these properties. But those deals are out there in multiple markets, like Indiana, like you just said, across the United States. When you see a property that's sitting on the market for 30, 40, 50 days, then your leverage comes in as a buyer, and you're able to go in and say, even properties that are on the MLS that are listed for $120,000, I can offer 100, I can offer 98, I can try to get in there for a little bit less, and the 1% rule is still working. I'm seeing it even. Does it work? Does it work as well as if interest rates were 3.5%? No. But we are where we are with interest rates. So I think people overcomplicate it is what I'm saying. And I think that people think that I have to find the perfect deal. And you can search forever for the perfect deal, or you can buy singles and doubles right now. And then your portfolio starts to grow, and then you can borrow against it, or you can sell, or you can 1031 exchange into larger projects. That's exactly what I did to go from a few units to like over 80 to 90 units now. Is I took up that $100,000 from that duplex and I said, am I going to go put that in my bank account No, I'm going to take that $125,000 property that is now worth $225,000 property, take the 100 grand and I bought a $550,000 property that in 2023, that cash flows more, that appreciates more, that I still own today. So now I'm getting the 3 to 5% appreciation on the 550 versus the 125. Same level of appreciation in terms of percentage, higher dollar amount. So I always say, go buy crappy duplexes and then trade up to nicer ones and trade up to nicer properties. And before you know it, your real estate portfolio starts to grow pretty fast. So hopefully that was like tactful enough. These deals are out in the MLS. I'm telling you, like I see them all. I do this all day. I search for them. I'm not saying that you're going to find the absolute best deal that a wholesaler has already seen, but they're out there and people ignore it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And just on the different scenarios there. So the one you mentioned, say you're high income and you're looking to buy a duplex within, an hour, 45 minutes from the central area of where you're at. What would be the benefit of living in one unit as opposed to just renting that unit out? Because you're getting the income or versus saving the income. So what would be the reason to live in it rather than just putting another tenant in there?
What I would say is if you're not going to live in the property on a duplex, you're likely going to have to put 25% down. So do you have $125,000? And is that really the best use of your capital, is to go put 120 down on a $500,000 property? Probably not. For some people it could be, but I would say, okay, well, if I can put $35,000 or $50,000 down and go live in one of the units and reduce my housing expense, I would go that route. And then you stay there for a couple years, 1, 2, 3 years, rents go up, and then you're able to get a higher return on the, on the rents that you would have gotten had you purchased it outright in the beginning. So that's the thing, is like taking as little amount of, like taking advantage of the owner occupied loans and taking as little amount of money as I possibly can out of my pocket, because money is better used in your pocket to go deploy into other investments than potentially dumping it all into one property. That's the benefit that I see.
Okay. Now, would you say after you buy your first residential, maybe you buy a couple, when do you venture into the commercial? Is that more like, okay, this is what I want to do I want to be a real estate professional, I'll buy commercial, or could you also be buying commercial as a W-2 employee?
Yeah, I think it depends how you would define commercial. Like we're getting commercial loans on our 5 unit, our 10 unit, our 15 unit, so like larger multifamily.
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean. Larger multifamily,
Yeah.
not necessarily like.
Well, I can tell you the trajectory that we had. And this is why I always tell people to just document your journey and just share your story. I'm not suggesting that you have to start a podcast. We've been podcasting for 7 years. It's not easy, but it allows me to have cool conversations with someone like yourself. And now we know each other. We're in different markets. Who knows the deals that we could refer to each other, the people that we could put each other in touch with. So I say this, document your journey, just share your story. Tell people what you're doing, because there's a lot of people in your life that don't know you're interested in real estate. They would send you an uncle who's a lender, or they would send you an agent who's awesome if they knew. So you have to share your story. You have to not be afraid to tell people what you're doing. And by doing that, for us, it allowed me to share the problems that I was having with the duplex. I had a duplex that burned down. So I was like, oh my God, the worst possible thing that could happen in real estate happened to me. We had insurance. It worked out. Everything was fine. Tenants got out. No one got hurt. It wasn't even our property that caught fire. It was the next door neighbors. I say all this to say, I had this story to tell. So people were like, oh man, I can relate to this. Like, I had this problem with this duplex too, or I'm trying to buy real estate. Like, what's the best way? How did you do what you did? So once we started to share our story, we started to have conversations with more people. I realized that our best way to buy real estate was to partner on larger deals, because I was buying $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 properties, and I didn't have the money to buy a $2.5 million 18 unit. But we found partners that did. So then that's how we were able to grow, is like, I would rather own 25% of a $2.5 million property than try to save up my whole life and never get to that point. I don't have to own it 100% outright if I find the right people. So you graduate by just doing it on your own for a couple years. Get a few properties under your belt. And there are people around you that are interested in this that you don't even know because you're not sharing it. Share your story, talk about it. Before you know it, kind of by osmosis, you'll find your tribe, you'll find your people. And then that's how partnerships started to form for us. Some people might say, I don't want a partner, I want to do it all myself, and that's fine too. But I think you kind of graduate into I like to break it off in bite-sized pieces. I mean, you can go buy a 15 unit off the bat without a doubt. You can 100% do it. It's just not how we did it, and it's a little bit more daunting, you know?
Yeah, totally. So as we kind of wrap this up here before we head over to the Q&A portion inside of the Get Wealth community, how would you direct somebody to educate themselves? I know you teach this. How can people get involved with what you're doing? And maybe what are some of the best resources out there to really equip yourself with the knowledge that you need to go and buy your first house hack or rental property?
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, like the way, so we have a podcast that comes out twice a week. And we're sharing stories of high-level entrepreneurs that, you know, made it from wherever they came from to you know, doing big things. And Ryan and I also share our story and the lessons that we've learned. So our podcast is called the Wealth Juice Podcast, and you can listen to that wherever you would listen to podcasts. We have our social media, really Instagram, at Wealth Juice Official. We're posting motivational quotes. I'm sharing literally the details of how we're buying properties and what I would do if I were starting over. So, I mean, follow us and listen to us. I think that's a good way to do it, but there are tons of resources out there. I think what happens though is that people get stuck in a situation where they're like, man, I've been listening to podcasts and reading books for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. It's like, that's how you get the motivation to, and the inspiration to go, I'm going to go do this. The next thing I would do is go hire a mentor or go find a community of people that are doing what you want to do, that are a couple steps ahead of you, not 1,000 steps ahead, but a few steps ahead of you, and associate yourselves with them and see what they're doing. And before you know it, if you surround yourself in a room full of sharks, you're going to become a shark. And I mean, that's just like a example, but like, you have to be the environment. Doing this alone makes it a lot harder, and you start to second guess yourself. You start to question. You need the community, the accountability, and the motivation to go do it, and then have someone look over your shoulder and be like, you're doing this right. Like, this is what you set out to do. So we teach people how to buy their first or next rental property. It's because I wish I had a mentor in the beginning to show me that way. But not just us. There's plenty of places out there you can get information. Information is abundant. It's just, what are you going to do with that information once you have it, right? So books like Set for Life by Scott Trench, which is a great book that I read. Obviously, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I'm sure a lot of people talk about, is another great book. I Would Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Like, that's a great, just like overall, like, wealth building book. But if you want the hands-on, like, help, I think we're a good resource for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, appreciate it.